The Penn State head coaching search has gotten a brand new update as it looks like the top of the list is starting to solidify. Who's at the top of the list? Who's out? We're going to talk about it all on this episode of the Big Ten Huddle. And welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. We are brought to you and presented by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here. I'm your host, JR, and today we're talking Penn State head coaching search, the candidates that you need to know. We have 4 candidates at the top. We have a secret candidate who could be near the top here soon, and then we have 3 candidates who I am ruling out of this race unless something happens with these top 4 candidates. I do not think the 3 here at the bottom are going to be there. They're still going to get named. They're still going to have people talking about them. But if you know what's going on inside the building, then you are going to know that the 3 here at the bottom are not currently being considered, more backup options at this point. Now, going into this Penn State head coaching search, a big name that was mentioned was Mike Elko. And yes, I do have him here on the screen next to me. Okay. And it does say bidding war because right now there does seem to be interest by Mike Elko for the Penn State job. And you might be saying, JR, why in the world would Mike Elko have interest in going there? He's running things super well at Texas A&M. That's what we got in the comment section the first time when Chris and I did this video, and people said, terrible show. You don't know what you're talking about. Mike Elko's not going to, Penn State or anything like that. Okay, buddy, we'll see what happens. But right now, it looks like this is a real possibility, and Penn State could get into a bit of a bidding war with Texas A&M for Mike Elko's services. Now, let's start with Mike Elko and where he's from. Mike Elko is from New Jersey, right? In that kind of area where Penn State likes to recruit, north of the DMV type of area. Up there in New Jersey, where there is a good amount of talent. People don't really recognize it because it is a smaller state, but there is a good amount of talent in New Jersey. And then where did he graduate college from? That's right, the University of Pennsylvania. For those of you who don't know, the way it's referenced normally is Penn. Yes, the Ivy League college, Penn. So Mike Elko, smarty pants galore. Not really smarty pants. That makes it sound like he's a nerd. He's not a nerd, okay? But super smart guy, great head coach. He was there at Duke. He did a great job there. Took the job at Texas A&M, where Jimbo Fisher, who won a national championship, couldn't do anything. I mean, he had a huge recruiting class and basically botched the entire thing. But what Mike Elko would be able to do at Penn State is come in and continue the success that they've already had. And if there is a belief by some down there in the South, and Mike Elko could be a part of it, the belief could be prevalent that, if you go to Penn State, it's easier to win there. It's easier to get into the playoffs. Now, I don't personally believe that is the case, but that does seem to be the sentiment around the Southeast a little bit in, Texas, basically the southern states. That seems to be the belief a little bit. So if Mike Elko has looked around and said, yeah, this SEC is pretty tough, maybe I'll go to the Big Ten where there's less parity. Sure, but you have to build a better team if you want to win the Big Ten because you still got Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, Michigan can get up there a few times. You still got those teams who are going to be rocking and rolling and being good programs. And as we've seen for Penn State, it's not been exactly super easy, but you can attribute much of those issues to James Franklin and his lack of ability to win big games. But if we're talking Mike Elko makes a whole lot of sense. Where he's from, Pat Kraft is willing to go out of his way to pay the next head coach a lot of money. And honestly, you could be looking at a contract of around $15 million for Mike Elko, depending on where he goes. He could stay at Texas A&M. He could go to Penn State. But I truly do believe that Mike Elko does, in fact, have interest in this job. This is not just to get him paid to go to Texas A&M. That might be a benefit of what's going on here. But Mike Elko does have serious interest in going to Penn State, and this is a name that we need to continue to be aware of. Now, the only issue is that Mike Elko is probably going to be a coach who is in the college football playoffs. Right now, Texas A&M has odds of minus 4,000. Number 3 team in the country. Doesn't look like they have anybody left on their schedule that's going to be for sure losses. So this is a team that even at like 10-2, they've done enough so far this season. Being in the SEC, we all know the bias that happens for teams like that. Number 1 strength of record according to ESPN. They are going to get the benefit of the doubt to be able to make it into the college football playoffs. And Texas A&M, if they do that, then you're looking at an interesting situation here, because one thing that not everybody is talking about or thinking about is Penn State hiring a coach who makes the playoffs versus a coach who doesn't make the playoffs. Because if you have an opportunity to make the playoffs and win a national championship, you're not leaving that school to go to the other school. You might leave a school before a bowl game, right? Those don't matter as much as the playoffs. Sorry, if you don't like that, I get it, but that's just the way college football is nowadays. So you might be willing to leave before a bowl game. You're not going to leave before the playoffs, and that is something that Penn State has to take into consideration, especially with this 2026 class losing recruits. Kevin Brown is going to be going on a visit to Ohio State during the Penn State game. Come on, Spell is over there, but he looks like he's trending to Notre Dame, and there's other guys that are trending away from Ohio State right now. Indiana, it looks like is going to get a wide receiver. Well, never mind. Scrap that. That's for a different episode. Anyway, but right now it looks like Penn State is having a lot of issues with their 2026 class, and you want to be able to bring somebody in who can mend those issues and get the recruits in. Or you want to be able to get somebody to come in who might be able to bring some recruits with them, bring some players with them, right? Revitalize the roster a little bit. And that would be the plus side of hiring somebody like Mike Elko, who might be able to say, yeah, I could bring some players from Texas A&M, some guys who have some talent, who might be willing to relocate because they just like Mike Elko that much. If that's the case, then I could see something like this happening. But that is a pretty risky bet because the minute these guys go on the market, they're going to be flooded with some pretty big offers, which means Penn State is going to be in the game as much as everybody else is. Now, another coach, and I believe this coach could probably go to Penn State before the playoffs happen because most likely his team is not going to make the playoffs, but there is still the opportunity for them to be there. Missouri on FanDuel has odds of plus 1040 to make the playoffs. These are the worst odds of anybody that we are considering here to make the playoffs, the four coaches that we are considering here to make the playoffs. So Eli Drinkwitz does make a good amount of sense. There's some smoke picking up from him. His camp does seem to be responding to Penn State's camp and trying to go through and say, yeah, there might be some interest here. It's nothing, super concrete happening, but there does seem to be interest there. And he is also an established head coach who is a good recruiter. And that's one thing that people are saying about this job that Pat Kraft wants is he wants an established head coach. He wants somebody with good experience and a good conference playing against top tier teams. You can't go out and hire a guy who can't win top 25 games for a guy who couldn't win top 10 games, right? Sorry, not trying to take a shot at Matt Rule. We'll talk about him here a little bit later on. But overall, like that just doesn't jive with the the fans and the people supporting the programs and stuff like that. So there would be an issue with that, but Eli Drinkwitz has shown he can win some big games. Beat Ohio State in a bowl game. He's contended with some big name teams in the SEC. They've played a relatively easy schedule there in the out of conference the past few years, but that would need to pick up, obviously. And there also could be some thought to some of these SEC coaches like Mike Elko wanting to get out of the SEC with them going to 9 conference games if they do think that the SEC is all that strong. Again, I do not think that, but that does seem to be the sentiment among some of these SEC coaches. So Eli Drinkwitz does make sense for Penn State. There does seem to be some interest there. We'll be tracking this one, and it definitely would be interesting because he does seem to be the coach most likely here who is not going to make the playoffs, and that would obviously be a plus for Penn State, so that way they could bring him in and have him be a good recruiter for this team. Next is Jeff Brohm over there at Louisville. Jeff Brohm at his alma mater right now, and I know that's what everybody's going to say. JR, he's at his alma mater. He's not going to leave. Well, does his alma mater offer what Penn State can offer? No. And if you go to your alma mater, what is the goal of being able to do that, right? The goal of going there would be to leave the program in a better situation than where you found it. Is Jeff Brohm satisfied with going to Louisville and retiring there? Maybe. Or is he saying, I couldn't really win at Purdue, so I might as well go to Louisville and win there and put my program in a better spot? Penn State, it's a program where you can win national championships at. You do have better resources there. You do have a program that has a family atmosphere that you might be looking for to get you out of your family atmosphere at your alma mater. So it's not crazy to think that Jeff Brohm could possibly go to Penn State, but you would need to see a lot of money spent on Jeff Brohm, and I'm not sure some of the money that has been floated around out there is money that Jeff Brohm is worth, right? I think that Mike Elko can be a national championship winning head coach. I've seen it. I've seen him at Texas A&M. I've seen him do a really good job at Duke. I saw Jeff Brohm do a really good job at Purdue, make it to the Big Ten championship game, and I've seen him do a good job at Louisville, but I've not seen him at that top tier program competing in the top five, beating top tier teams like Texas A&M. Well, I mean, they haven't really beat top tier teams. Notre Dame, they beat Notre Dame, so that was a big game. Top tier team at the time, although it be in preseason rankings, still Notre Dame looks pretty good even after that loss. So you definitely have that aspect of Mike Elko. You don't really have that aspect of Jeff Brohm, which, I don't think Jeff Brohm would be asking for the same paycheck that Mike Elko would, just because Louisville is not going to be in the bidding war quite like a Mike Elko would. But I definitely think that Jeff Brohm is somebody who is going to demand a good amount of cash. We're probably talking north of $11 million here, maybe near $13 million in order to get him away from Louisville. I mean, you tell me, Penn State fans, like, would you consider Jeff Brohm worthy of $13 million? Maybe, right? If you got it in the bank, it's not yours. Maybe. But I don't know if I would consider him worth it that much, and I think you would be taking a bit of a chance. But if you really want the quarterback development, the passing, offense, everything else, then you could possibly look for something like that. So we'll see. Jeff Brohm, a name that is in play for Penn State. Now, the final piece of Penn State football news on here for the final coaching candidate, and then we'll get to our secret one, is Brent Key. And if you've been on Twitter or anything like that today, it's Friday night when I am recording this, then you know that Brent Key is interviewing with Penn State sometime next week. It was rumored it was going to happen on Friday, but next week is Georgia Tech's bye week, and so it does look like he is most likely going to be interviewing sometime with Penn State next week. Now, we don't have a whole lot of information yet because the interview has not happened. There's not been a whole lot of talk, but what we do know is that Georgia Tech has their offense humming right now. Haynes King is, he probably should be talked about for the Heisman a little bit. I mean, he should be talked about for the Heisman more than Diego Pavia. Like, my word, Diego Pavia is not nearly the quarterback that Haynes King is. I don't think that's a hot take. If you watch Diego Pavia and Haynes King, a much better quarterback in my opinion. He's just not out here, trying to be Johnny Manziel and, the SEC's, poster child to try and save them. My word, could you believe, like, how far has the SEC fallen that their poster child has to be a 25-year-old quarterback at Vanderbilt? Like, holy cow. I know Ty Simpson's up there too, but you see some of these people putting Diego Pavia over Ty Simpson. It's just like, what in the world? Anyway, that's my SEC bashing segment, I guess. So Georgia Tech right now has odds of plus 104 on FanDuel to make the college football playoffs. And I do think that a lot of people are considering Georgia Tech a lock to be in the playoffs at this point. But I don't think Georgia Tech would get in at 10-2. Number one, if they lose another conference game at 10-2, or two conference games in the ACC, I don't think they get in. But they do have Georgia still left on the schedule. If they lose to Georgia and if they lose an ACC game, are they still in the playoffs? Maybe. They might make the ACC championship game in that scenario. I guess it might depend on who they lose to, but they don't have a very difficult ACC schedule coming up the rest of the year. Georgia is the most difficult team left on that schedule. So we'll see if Georgia Tech is going to be looking, or is going to be making the playoffs or not. We'll kind of have to see how the rest of the season plays out. But I think even with a loss to Georgia, this is still a team that makes the playoffs. As long as they don't drop one in the ACC, I think they're good. They'll make the ACC football championship game and they'll be fine. But definitely something to track here with Brent Key. He's done a fantastic job at Georgia Tech. I personally think that he would be a great hire by Penn State. The ACC is sinking right now, and we probably could have mentioned this with Jeff Brohm too, but that conference is not in a good situation. Once Florida State, Clemson, all these teams, Miami, North Carolina, the teams that are worth the most in that conference leave, honestly, you could possibly see like Louisville, going to the Big East or something like that. I don't know how that all would work out, but just something to save their basketball program because it's not going to be a good conference there. You might still keep some of the good basketball schools, so it might still be a good basketball conference, but who knows, right? A lot of conference realignment stuff going on. Anyway, back to the point. Brent Key, I think, would be a fantastic hire for Penn State. I think that he has connections down south to be able to be down there. He doesn't have as many resources as he would at Penn State, and then obviously the Big Ten, the brand, the national championship caliber type of program that he would have. It's definitely something that would be enticing for Brent Key. Now, the secret name I mentioned would be Matt Campbell. And I know Matt Campbell was mentioned a lot kind of beforehand, but he's not been mentioned all that much recently. There could be a little bit of buzz going up with Matt Campbell's name out there. I'm not saying that he's a candidate. I'm not saying that he's a top tier guy or anything. I'm just saying when you see Matt Campbell's name, don't completely disregard it. Don't be like, okay, that's not happening. Like there has been some smoke there, and I think that the smoke could possibly have some legs. So I'm not going to put him in my top 4 kind of tier 1 coaches. I think Brent Key is in there. We'll see how the interview goes next week, but definitely that's my update of the top 4 coaches in the Penn State coaching search that are left. Now, my 3 that are definitely out, I'll just list them for you really fast. Manny Diaz from Duke, their head coach, Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, and finally Matt Rule, the head coach at Nebraska. Manny Diaz, he is somebody that I think some people in the program like, right? He was there with James Franklin, did a good job with his defense, but he just doesn't have the head coaching experience. You know, he's kind of like Jeff Brohm light, right? He's been in the ACC, he got fired from Miami, he came to Penn State, doing a pretty good job at Duke, but he's not necessarily getting the big wins that you need at a Duke program to kind of help elevate you as a coach, and it is his first year at Duke, right? Or no, yeah, second year, sorry, because he Tom Allen last year at Penn State. So his second year at Duke this year. And I don't know if that's enough of a track record for Pat Kraft to bet his career essentially on this. And that's honestly, like, when we talk about how much money would Pat Kraft be willing to spend, as much as it even possibly takes, as much as they even possibly have, because Pat Kraft is most likely in a situation where he needs this hire to go well. I'm not saying they're going to fire him or anything like that if the hire doesn't go well, but typically when you make these hires as the athletic director, if it doesn't work out, it comes back on you. Good, bad, for whatever reason, it comes back on you. And so if it doesn't go well for them, that's going to come back on Pat Kraft, and he needs this hire to go well, which is why he wants to go for an established head coach somewhere. Speaking of that established head coach, Matt Rule at Nebraska does not look like the guy that's going to get it done for Penn State. I mentioned the kind of wins record and stuff like that. Yes, Pat Kraft, Matt Rule, buddy, and that would be a good situation. But I think that Matt Rule needs to show himself a little bit better against the top tier programs type of stuff. He needs to show himself as a better talent, accumulator and stuff, which I think might be a little difficult in Nebraska just because they don't recruit as well as some other schools out there. But if this team starts humming in the top 15, top 10 in recruiting 2-3 years from now, then that all could change. And Matt Rule, if he starts winning some of these big games, could be considered for stuff like that. But I don't think with the extension and everything else, the extension doesn't put Matt Rule out of it. I mean, Penn State would still be willing to pay that kind of stuff to get him out of that, but I don't think that's something that they're gonna fly for. And then finally, Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline, I believe, does want a head coaching job someplace. I just don't think Pat Kraft wants to put all of his chips in on a guy with no experience as head coach. Personally, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but there is some thought process out there of like, who would his staff be? Does he have enough experience as a head coach, yada, 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 or as a coordinator to be a head coach, yada, yada, yada. I don't think you need that, but some people really value it. So that's basically the update on the Penn State head coaching search position, whatever you want to call it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Would love to hear from you all, but that's what I got. And you know what? Put it in the comments. Who is your prediction for Penn State's next head coach? As we kind of have this continue to go on, we'll kind of update you maybe every few days as we can. At the very least, once a week, we'll kind of update you on what's going on all this stuff, because you guys do seem to enjoy this stuff. Today it was just me. Might bring Chris back in for the next one. We'll see. Thanks very much for watching and listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.